My name is Katie Yates, and this is Season 6 of the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife's podcast, Fishing Game Changers. In this season, I'm back in the field with our staff to learn more about what they do, why they love it, and what drives them to apply their time and talent to the Maine outdoors. A few weeks ago in June, I interviewed Ashley O'Neal, a fish culturist at the Governor Hill Hatchery in Augusta, Maine. Like so many meetings occurring these days, we connected via Zoom.
So my name is Ashley O'Neal. My title currently is Fish Culturist over at the Governor Hill Fish Hatchery in Augusta. And what that position entails is basically all of the rearing and fish husbandry for salmonids raised by the state to stock into freshwater lakes and streams throughout the state. At Governor Hill, we're predominantly raising lake trout, splake, and brook trout.
What is your background? How did you arrive at this position?
Yeah, so I'm from Maine originally. From the Sabattis area. I went to college at Unity College. I was largely focusing on wildlife biology. I thought I wanted to handle all the cuddly critters after getting my bachelor's of science degree. I worked at the Maine Wildlife Park for a couple of seasons, being an assistant gamekeeper there. That was a seasonal position. I spent a couple of seasons working with Emily McCabe. I was teaching the Hooked on Fishing, Not on Drugs program, or assisting her with teaching that. Assisted with the Becoming an Outdoors Woman program. Those kind of things. Did that for a couple of years. I spent a year working at a zoo in Boston. I spent a couple summers working with Biodiversity Research Institute, doing loon productivity surveys. Like most people, I kind of, grabbed experience wherever I could grab it.
Many interested in pursuing wildlife biology are motivated by the idea they'll get to be handling lots of, as Ashley puts it, cute, cuddly critters. But through coursework and seasonal positions, Ashley realized that mostly wildlife biologists are dealing with data, paperwork, and people.
So I didn't really grow up doing a lot of fishing. So I wasn't really passionate about fish or fishing initially. What kind of steered me towards the fisheries side of things, going from, initially pursuing wildlife, was that I don't get to handle the cute fuzzy critters as much as you think you're going to. It's a lot of paperwork because somebody wants to build a store or a level of, piece of woods or wetland or something like that. And that's, largely the wildlife biologist's job is more dealing with people than with wildlife. And then kind of getting into hatcheries, I liked that it was still largely working with my hands. I take a lot of pride in the fish that we put out. And then, of course, now that I'm working with fish, we go fishing all the time, and it's become this big passion of mine where it wasn't growing up, which is always really fun, too. Because now when we do go fishing and we catch a trout or a salmon, I'm like, hey, I played some role in raising that fish, and it's really cool to see, that they're this healthy product that we're putting out. People are always really appreciative. They always follow the stocking trucks and they want to see what's on the truck. They want to see what's going in the water. They're just really, really interested in the fish that we raise. And I find that really rewarding for this job, that people like what we're doing. And I feel like we're doing a good job. And hopefully they feel like we're doing a good job.
And I think a lot of people get a little confused about the relationship between fisheries and hatcheries. I think the public commonly believes that hatcheries are responsible for deciding where the fish go.
I'm so glad you said that, because that is not true. So from the hatchery perspective, we literally raise fish, and from there where they get stocked is largely determined by our fisheries biologists. So the fisheries biologists will go through and they're, intimately familiar with the different streams and lakes and rivers in their region. And then they decide based off of their biological research and netting events and stuff like that, what species they want to raise where. And then what age class those species need to be and how many they want to put in. And then from the hatcheries, we say, okay, and then we raise that number of fish and then go plant those fish in the spring and the fall.
Ashley's work in the fish hatchery revolves around the needs of the fish they raise, from eggs to fries or baby fish, to the minimum length for harvest and then stocking or when they're finally released.
At Governor Hill Hatchery, we have a lot of fry, and not this time of year, but we do produce a lot of eggs here. So, once getting to work, it's usually, take care of your eggs and fry first thing. Your fry are feeding for as close to 24 hours as you can get them. So it's a lot of constant feeding for them, and cleaning up, and then
And
feeding.
fries are the little, how old are they fish?
Yeah, so the fry, I'm sorry, yeah, so the fry are little baby fish. So, and what I mean by baby fish is most of our salmonid species spawn in the fall. Doing this interview now in June, that means that most of these fry are about 6 months old after hatch. So most of the rest of the day is cleaning pools or feeding the bigger fish. So looking at June now, we're calling them fall yearlings, so the 1.5-year-old fish that are going to be stocked in the fall, as well as the brood fish, brood meaning the adults that we're keeping to take eggs the following year, or in the case of lake trout, for the following 5 years, because they take so long to mature.
And how many fish do you raise and release on a regular basis? Is it change per year, or is there kind of a normal amount that you typically deal with?
There's a very slight fluctuation, but for the most part, Governor Hill raises and stocks 60,000 catchable trout. And by catchable, that means that the fish are the minimum length limit for catching and keeping those fish. So for brook trout, that's like a 6-inch fish. Obviously, we raise bigger sizes, but that's, kind of the minimum for the most part, 60,000 fish.
For Ashley, connecting people to the resources she raises is one of the most rewarding aspects of her job.
Pre-COVID, we did a lot of tours at our hatcheries, and I always found that a rewarding part of the job. We gave tours to, anybody and everybody pretty much. We'd have school groups come through that wanted to learn about raising fish and fish identification and fish life stages. Those school groups might have been like first graders, they might have been high schoolers. But I always think that's so interesting because kids, as a general rule of thumb, have such a different way of thinking than us as adults. And they would always come up with these really interesting observations or questions about our fish at the hatchery. So it's always, even though we're giving the tours, it's always a little educational for us to be like, oh, that's an interesting spin or an interesting observation. So I always find these really, really interesting. But also I'm amazed at how many locals will just kind of drop in to the hatchery. And if we're not, busy doing something that's on a time constraint, then we'll give them a tour. And it's always interesting how many people didn't know we were there or didn't know what we raised or didn't know what we do.
I have to say, I'm very partial to hatcheries. I grew up in New York. My dad would take me to the fish hatcheries in New York. That's just something he was personally interested in. He likes fishing. And I just have this sort of, I don't know, is a level of nostalgia when I talk about hatcheries or I learn about hatcheries. It kind of brings me back to being a little kid and talking to the hatchery workers and learning about the process. It was really fascinating to me growing up. So there's a special place in my heart for hatcheries.
I love hearing stories like that. And, I've spent most of my career so far as a fish culturist at the New Gloucester hatchery, and they're kind of tucked off to the side, but it was amazing how many people would stop in and say, oh, we used to come all the time. My grandfather would bring me through this hatchery when we were little kids. For a lot of people, like a shocking number of people have some tie to the hatcheries from their childhood. And I think that is just so cool.
Join me next Monday for the final episode of this season. I'll be chatting with another one of our staff members and exploring what it is that makes them a game changer. In the meantime, be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite listening app. If that happens to be the Apple Podcast app, leave us a review and let us know what you think. To learn more about this series and past episodes, visit mefishwildlife.com/changers.